Hello, today I am going to show you how to edit in a minimalistic black and white style, so-called Dan Koe style. Recently I created this video.
Typically, the guideline is take 50 to 60% of your take home pay should be going towards your fixed needs. So, this includes things like groceries, rent or mortgage, transportation, utilities, bills. Then 20 to 30% should be going towards your spending. So, going out, dining out, drinks. And then minimum 10%, you want to aim for savings and investments.
And in this tutorial I will show you how to edit everything from this video up until the 3D rectangles, including them. So let's go to After Effects. Okay, so in After Effects create a vertical composition. The first thing is to create the ball. So go up here, you would expect to choose ellipse tool, but actually choose a rounded rectangle tool. Because when doing this Dan Koe animations, you sometimes want to morph one shape into the other. And it's very easy to morph the rounded rectangle tool into either ellipse or rectangle. So it just gives you more options. So let's create it while holding shift. And right now let's go to contents and increase the roundness to make it a circle. Put the anchor point in the middle by using a shortcut Ctrl, Alt and Home. Remove the fill and set the stroke to white and to, let's say, 5 pixels. Also let's decrease the scale. So at the start, keyframe the position, go like 10 frames ahead, keyframe the position again, and at the second keyframe move it up like that. I will make it even smaller. Right now select both of these keyframes and hit F9. Now go to graph editor and make most of the animation happen at the start. So make your graph look like that. Okay, now copy this layer 2 more times. So select this ball layer and click Ctrl D 2 times. Let's label all of these balls. Right now these 2 duplicated layers, you can trim them so they start when the animation of the ball is finished. I mean the first animation of the ball, of course. Go 10 frames ahead again. Open the position on all of these 3 layers and keyframe the position in this moment. Okay, and right now set the position of all of these balls in the places where you want them to be in a moment. So of course make sure that the X position is the same on every ball, and then you will only need to adjust the Y position. Okay, the empty space between them should be approximately the same, so I have to move this ball a little down. I would say like that. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, it's good. One more thing I forgot to check is that if you actually want this to be perfect, you'll have to select the first ball and on the second keyframe go to align options at the right, and you can make it so that it's perfectly at the center of the screen. Let's do that on all of these layers. Right now also adjust the Y position. Okay, it's good. And now we'll create the rectangles appearing on the screen. So in order to create them and later animate them, go to pen tool and hold shift to draw a straight line like that. And now increase the stroke size, so I will set it to 45. And to make it perfectly in the middle of this ball, you have to make sure that the anchor point of this rectangle is in the middle of this shape. So click Ctrl, Alt and Home. This way it's in the middle. And now just compare the Y positions. Trim this layer and put the start here. And right now copy this layer 2 more times and adjust the Y position. So copy it from here and from here. I've also renamed these rectangles to know which rectangle is associated with which ball. And right now we'll have to add a trim paths to all of these rectangles. So open these rectangles here and go to add, select trim paths, open the trim paths and keyframe the end at the start right there for these 3 rectangles. Now go 10 frames ahead and keyframe the end here also. Now click U on all of these 3 layers so it will show you only the keyframes. And at the first keyframe set the trim paths to 0. This way it's animated. And to make it look the same as in my animation, we'll have to stagger them a little. So the upper rectangle should be appearing first. Let's move 1 frame ahead and set the start of the second rectangle here. And 1 more frame and the third rectangle here. Maybe let's stagger it even 1 more frame. Okay, now it's good, but it's way too slow. So move these 3 keyframes closer to the first set of keyframes. And right now select all of these 6 keyframes and click F9. Go to graph editor Select the latter 3 points and move them like that. Now I think it's kinda too fast. Let's select the latter 3 keyframes and move them like 2 frames later. Let's see right now. Okay, I think it's pretty good. And right now what I don't like about this animation is that it's way off to the left, as you can see. It's not in the middle of the screen. So we can fix that by creating a new null object. Connect everything to this null object. So select everything and parent link it to the null. And right now open the position on the null and move everything to the center, like that. And now you can delete the null and it will stay in this position. So it's a really useful trick. Okay, and after this is animated, we'll actually have to create a new null object. Connect everything to this null object. Let's move the start of this null object here. So right now everything is connected to this null. Let's go like 3 frames ahead or 4 frames ahead. And open the scale on this null and also the position. Keyframe it here, go 10 frames ahead and keyframe it again here. Increase the scale and the position so that the middle circle is in the middle, in the center. And the middle rectangle should not be visible. So these are my values and this is how it looks right now. And right now we'll have to also get rid of the additional 2 circles, so the upper and lower circle. And in order to do that, just go to the first keyframe on the null and select the circles and keyframe the position at this moment and also keyframe the opacity at this moment. Go to the second keyframe on the null and the position and opacity again, and at the second keyframe move them out of the screen. So the upper circle, move it up, and the lower circle, move it down, like that. And also at the second keyframe of the opacity, set the opacity to 0 on both of the circles. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, it looks like in the animation that I created. Select the opacity keyframes and make the opacity appear faster at the start, so create an is in, as we did previously. And I want to also show you a really good plugin, so I actually have to make it visible for myself. It's called Easy Copy. It's a free plugin, and what this plugin allows you to do is to copy the values from the graph editor of some keyframes to the other keyframes. So, for example, I selected these 2 keyframes. This is how the graph looks. And now when I select these 2 keyframes, this is how the graph looks. Right now, if I select these 2 keyframes, click copy on the plugin. Now select the other 2 keyframes and click paste. You can see that the graph has been copied. And this is probably one of the most useful plugins that you can download, and it's completely free. So I highly recommend you download it. Okay, let's see how the whole thing looks. We want the scaling to be faster, so let's easy ease this 4 keyframes on the null, go to graph editor, select the second group of keyframes and create an is in animation. I think now it's kinda too fast, so actually let's make it like that, maybe something like this. And now this circle is basically a pie chart and we'll create the highlight showing 50 and 60%. So in order to perfectly measure 50 and 60%, there are ways to do it in After Effects, but I think the easiest way is to just find the templates for it. So right there in the asset folder, I have 50 and 60%. I will import it right now. Of course, you will have the assets used in this video in the description. Go to pen tool and start drawing a semicircle like that. Adjust the handle. Also decrease the stroke, of course. Let's set it to 3. Now you can see better what is happening. Select the semicircle and delete the stroke and make the fill white. Now put this semicircle below the stroke of this pie chart. So the stroke of this pie chart is called ball 2 in my case. Let's rename this semicircle to 50%. Hide the 50% model layer. Okay, let's decrease the opacity. Right now make the 60% visible. Really take your time with it because you have to make it perfectly in the middle. If you have the anchor point of the 60% model layer in the middle, then it should be exactly in the same place as the anchor point of the pie chart circle. Okay, it's pretty good. Now let's draw this 60% shape, so go to pen tool. This is how it looks in my case. Now let's move it below the other layers and rename it to 60%. Make a white fill and remove the stroke. Right now, as you can see, if I decrease the opacity of that, also the opacity of 50% is lowered, but you can see that the color is more visible in the place where these two layers are stacked on each other. So in order to avoid that, we want to copy the 50% layer, go to toggle switches modes and set the track matte of the 60% to this new duplicate of 50%. And right now invert this matte. On the duplicated 50% layer, set the opacity to 100%. Okay, if I set the opacity on both of them to 37, you can see that it looks perfectly the same, so this is what we wanted. So we can start animating this highlight. We can delete the images of 50 and 60%. As you can see, one more thing is that we must make all of this 3% layer follow the null object. Go to the moment where you want it to start animating, so let's say it will be 5 frames after the zoom in. Set the start of them right there. Keyframe the opacity at the start. Go like 10 frames ahead or 8 frames ahead. Keyframe the opacity on both of them again. Actually, don't keyframe the opacity on 60% for now, because we'll be only working on 50% for now. So set the opacity on 60% on 0. On the first keyframe on 50%, set it to 0. On the second keyframe, I think 37 is pretty good. So that's it. Let's go 5 frames ahead. Keyframe the opacity on 60 here, go 10 frames ahead, keyframe the opacity again, set it to 37. Let's see how it looks. It looks exactly as in my animation. Now we'll create the text take home pay. The font that I was using in my animation is Monsterrat, or I was also using Franklin Gothic Medium. So in this case, let's use Monsterrat Extra Bold. Let's say in this moment, keyframe position and opacity, go 10 frames ahead and keyframe them again. And on the first set of keyframes, we want the opacity to be at 0 and we want the text to not be visible on the screen because we want the text to come from below. Let's see. Yeah, it's good, but it's really slow. So select all of these keyframes, easy ease them, F9, go to graph editor. I will not use easy ease on opacity keyframes, because then you don't even see that there is any opacity animation. So let's see right now. Yeah, now it's better. Now we'll animate the opacity of these two highlights back to 0. So like that. And from this point, let's say 100 frames, so 2 frames after that, we'll start creating the transition to the whole widescreen. Okay, first we have to get rid of the take home pay text. So just animate it out the same way as we've animated this in, with the position and opacity keyframes. In order to create this effect of the duplicated circles going back and then transforming to a whole wide screen, we have to duplicate the circle that we have on the screen, duplicate it like 3 times, let's say. And in the moment when you want the animation to start, go to the main ball, so not the duplicates, open the position and the scale, keyframe it here. Go 10 frames ahead, keyframe it again, and adjust the position. For now, hide the duplicates, change the position, and also decrease the scale. Okay, this looks weird because of the easing. Let's for now remove the easing. Now this looks normal. Let's select all of these 4 keyframes, easy ease them, and create an ease in animation. Actually, maybe make it look like that. So most of it is happening in the middle. Yeah, but make it even faster in the middle. Okay, no, that's too much. Yeah, I think it's good. So right now select these 3 duplicates and set the start of them here when this animation is starting. Make them visible and copy the keyframes from there. And right now just stagger all of them by 1 frame. So this should look like that. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, this is the effect that we wanted. So it's working, but right now, also during this animation back, the main circle is also getting filled with white color. Open the circle, go to contents, rectangle, fill, keyframe the opacity of this fill, keyframe the opacity at the second set of keyframes. At the first keyframe, set the opacity to 0 and go up here and create a white fill for this. Right now you can see that it's getting filled with the white color. We can trim the end of the take home pay text. because we will not be using it anymore. Go at the second set of keyframes of the last duplicate, so the last animation of all of these circles. And from there go 10 frames ahead. No, actually in this place, firstly keyframe the position and the scale on the main ball and set the end on all of the 3 duplicates in this moment. Keyframe the position and the scale on the main circle here. Go 10 frames ahead. Keyframe it again. Actually it will not be 10 frames, I think it will be more like 6. Let's try with 7 right now. And on the second set of keyframes, scale it up a lot and move it to the middle. Like that, let's see. Okay, now we'll play with these keyframes in the graph editor. Let's move it like that. Let's see right now. Maybe actually make it 10 frames. Yeah, I think it looks good. So the transition is done and you can see that already we have 14 layers and there will be a lot of more things to animate. Okay, so now what we'll do to make our life much easier is to trim the main circle to this point. We'll not be using anymore. And from this point we'll be using a white solid. So create a new solid and make it white. And set the start of the solid here. Move it below all of the layers. Okay, after the transition the text fixed needs just appears out of the blue. So create a new text. Move it below all of the layers, but not the background layer, of course. We want it to start being visible here, so the transition is not fully done, but I think it's enough. And also in this moment when it appears, we'll start making a circle around that. So just go here, select rounded rectangle tool, and while holding shift draw a rectangle, remove the fill and add a black stroke. Go to contents, rectangle, and increase the roundness to make it an ellipse, make it a circle. Now click Ctrl Alt Home to center the anchor point and put this in the middle. Let's call it circle. Open the circle and add the trim paths. Keyframe the end. Let's go like 14 frames ahead. And at the first keyframe set the end to 0. We want the drawing of this circle to start at the bottom and not on the right side. So in order to do that you can just offset this. You see when you increase the offset, it is changing the position of the start. Right now select both of these keyframes, click F9 and make the graph look like that. Okay, yeah, it's good. Okay, another very useful thing when you're working with a lot of layers is to check this option. So this is the shy option. So if you know that you will not be using the layer anymore, you can just select this shy option on all of the layers that you want to hide and then click here, hide all of the shy layers. And what this does is it doesn't delete these layers, but it just hides them. As you can see, there is the layer counter and it goes 1, 2 and 8. This way you see we had like 14 layers and now we have 3. So now we'll create the 2 circles orbiting around this big circle. So create 2 rounded rectangles. Put the anchor point on both of these circles in the middle of them. So Ctrl, Alt and Home. Now create a keyframes and on the first keyframe move them kinda there. So they are coming from the side of the screen. To make them rotate around this circle, we'll create a new null object. Now put the anchor point of this null object in the middle of this square of the null object. So again, Ctrl, Alt, Home. And right now using the align panel, align it so it's perfectly in the middle. Let's also trim the start of this layer. And right now duplicate this layer and move the second null to the right of this circle and also up. So like that, kinda here. And right now duplicate this layer one more time and move the third null on the other side of the center null. So approximately right there. Open the rotation on the center null, keyframe it, go 10 frames ahead, keyframe again, and put the value on the second keyframe to -1. Now keyframe the rotation on the 2 other nulls in the same place. But at the second keyframe put it at 1 on both of them. And now parent link both the left null and the right null to the center null. This way you can see these nulls are orbiting around the main circle. We'll make this rotation animation much longer. Right now go to the moment where the circles align with the positions of the nulls. And if they don't align perfectly, you can either change the position of the circle or the position of the null. So I will put it a little up. Like that. And now in the moment when the nulls and the side circles are aligned, you want to keyframe the position of the circles. We can actually delete the previous keyframes and now move these 2 keyframes on the nulls, actually 3 keyframes because also this one, to this moment. And in this moment cut both of the side circles and parent link the new side circles to the side nulls. So this one will be parented to the left null and this one will be parented to the right null. And right now, as you can see, the circles are following the nulls. And now we'll have to play with the keyframes to make it look as we want. So at the start, we want the circles to be faster. So select the 4 keyframes on the original circles and click F9 and make it look kind of like this. And in this moment, select the keyframes of the center null, click F9 and make the graph look like that. Let's see how it looks. It's too fast right now. Let's select all of these 6 keyframes. Okay, I think this looks pretty good. So now we'll create the transition between this scene to the next scene by moving this circle up and changing the background to black. We'll need a null that will control everything that we see right now on the screen. So create a new null object. Let's call it movement. Okay, now connect the center and the fixed needs text and the main circle to this movement null object. So right now open the position on this new null object, keyframe it, go 10 frames ahead as usual, keyframe it again and move everything down. Okay, one more thing, I also forgot to connect the white background to this null object. And right now if we move it, you can see that the background is changing to black. So move everything down to the point where you cannot see the white background. And right now we'll only need to move the right circle. So open the position parameter, keyframe it in the moment of the transition, go to the second keyframe it again, and at the second keyframe move it there. One more thing is that during this transition, this circle is getting white because it will not be visible on the black background because it's black. So just as we did previously, we have to animate the fill of the circle. So keyframe the opacity at the second keyframe, at the first keyframe set it to 0, and at the second keyframe set it to 100, and change the fill to white. Now make sure that at the end of this transition, the ball is perfectly in the center, so align it to the center. Let's see how it looks right now. Okay, now we'll have to play with all the keyframes to make it look better. First of all, I will make it a little longer. I will select the opacity keyframes and easy ease them and make it happen at the start, so it's getting filled with white color much faster. Make the movement of the whole screen much faster at the start, so select the keyframes, click F9, go to the graph editor and make the graph look like that. Now the last thing, select the position keyframes on this ball and easy ease them. And right now edit the path of this ball to make it more round, because right now it's just a straight line. So click G, this way you select pen tool, and alt click on the second keyframe. This way you will see the handle. Edit this handle to make the path of this animation more round. Okay, so I've played a little with the keyframes, I will show you that in a moment, but this is how it looks right now. I think it's a pretty smooth transition. So you have to make sure that at this moment the ball doesn't stop in this place and it's in constant movement. And when you go frame by frame, it's always in different position. Of course, the trajectory, the path of the movement is not the same after this keyframe because now it goes more up, but it's still really good. And right now I see that in this moment, you can see that the opacity should already probably be on 100%. So let's make the graph look more like that. And let's even move the second keyframe closer. Yeah, so it's at 100% right there. How I created this constant movement. So you have to play with the rotation keyframes on the center null and with the position keyframes on the circle. So my rotation keyframes on the center null look like that. So what is happening here is that I've moved the keyframe from the ground because originally this keyframe was on the ground, so it looked like that, but I moved it up, and this way the animation doesn't stop, it's in constant movement, because on this keyframe the second movement starts, so this circle moves up And I've also made it so that at the start it's faster than later, because for example, if I was to put this keyframe higher like that, you could see that it doesn't look good because it stops for a moment at the start. Look here. And then the keyframes on the position of the circle look like that. So again, you have to move them up from the ground because originally they were here. This way the transition is finished, and the last thing that I will show you in this tutorial is how to create these 3D rectangles. Let's maybe hide all of the layers that we'll not be using anymore by making them shy. Okay, so the only two layers that are remaining is this ball and the movement null object. Let's move like 4 frames ahead and start creating this rectangle in this moment. So select the rounded rectangle tool. Let's maybe this time make it a square, so not a 3D rectangle, but a cube. Trim the start to this point. Make sure that there is no roundness on this layer because we want it to be a cube. Remove the fill, set the stroke to white color and the size of the stroke to 6, let's say, for now. We can change that later. Of course, align it so that it's perfectly in the center. And now the cube has 6 sides, so duplicate this layer 5 more times. Okay, so we'll start with the left side. So select the square that you want to be the left side, and now using another free plugin, we'll make the anchor point of this layer perfectly on the left side and in the middle. So this plugin is called Motion Tools. You can install it, it's completely free, the link will be in the description. And you can see using this tool you can align the anchor point wherever you want with just one click. So it's a very useful plugin. Okay, and make all of these layers 3D. Set the view to 2 screens. This way you will see what is happening at the top. Or you can of course change it from top to, let's say, left. Whatever you want basically. Now open the rotation on this left side and change the Y rotation to -90. Perfect, you can see we've created the left side. Now copy the left side and actually delete the right side because it will be much easier to just copy the left side. Call it right. Now open the position on this one and just move it to the right and change the view to 4 screens, and by looking at the front camera you can basically align it so it's perfectly in the same place as the side of the front. So here, let's go back to 2 views. Okay, so we have the sides. Instead of creating back from the scratch, let's just copy the front layer, delete the old back layer and call the front 2 layer back. Again, go to 4 views, and by looking at the top camera, you can align it so that it's perfectly in the back. As you can see, it looks pretty good even right now, but we'll also add bottom and top layers. So select the bottom layer and using the Motion Tools plugin again, put the anchor point at the bottom, open the rotation and rotate the X position, put it at -90. This way it's perfectly at the bottom. Delete the top layer, copy the bottom layer. Now call the bottom 2 layer top and adjust the position, put it higher. I need a front view, and on the front view you can perfectly see where you want to put it. So we've created our cube, but when you open the 4 views, you can see that when you look at the right camera or at the left camera, it's not perfectly in the middle when it comes to this dimension. So create a new null object, connect all of the layers creating this cube to this null object. Of course, make this null object a 3D, and now move it on the Z dimension so that it's kinda in the middle. It doesn't have to be perfect because the viewer will not see it anyway. And this is how we've created the cube. Now in order to put the icons inside of it, import the icons from the asset folder, so groceries icon, and this icon is fully black, so we have to use an effect called change to color. So search for change to color and change the color from black to white and set the change option to hue, lightness and saturation. Right now we can see it. And I also remember that in my main animation I've increased the stroke on this cube so it kinda matches the stroke of the icons. So select all of the layers creating the cube and set the stroke to 10. So put the icon in 3D space, decrease the scale of that. Let's go with 2 views. You can see it's in the middle, so it's good. Okay, and now in order to make this whole cube rotate, we have to create a new null object, trim the start of it, and connect everything, including the icon, to this null object. I mean everything that is creating the cube. Put the null object in 3D space, and you can see when you're changing the rotation, it's also rotating. So at the start, keyframe the Y rotation, go 10 frames ahead, keyframe the Y rotation again, and put it kinda -25, I think it's good. Maybe even too much, -20. I will make the animation a little longer also. Now another thing is that this cube appears on the screen out of nowhere, so we want to animate it appearing on the screen. So the icon we animate simply by opacity keyframe. And when it comes to animating the cube, what we'll do is add a trim paths, keyframe the end, go 10 frames ahead, keyframe the end again, and at the start put the keyframe to 0%. And now copy this trim paths keyframes and select all of the other layers and paste it here. And right now there is the animation of this cube appearing. Okay, now as the last thing, I will show you how to create a transition between this cube to the next cube. We'll trim this cube to this point. And right now we'll create a new camera, and don't change anything in the settings. Trim the start to this point, and right now go to 2 views, and let's duplicate all of the layers that create this cube. Move them up and put the start of them somewhere here. Create a new null object. This null is used to control the first cube, and this null will be used to control the second cube. So trim the start to this point. Right now open the camera, go to transform, and keyframe the point of interest. Move 10 frames ahead, keyframe the point of interest again. Connect the second cube to the second cube null object. Put this null object in 3D also. And right now by using this null object you will be able to control the second cube and put it somewhere here. Let's also rotate it like that. Yeah, I think this is good. And how I did this animation is I just created 5 cubes and I placed them so that they kind of created this semicircle. So first here, second here, the third will be here, the fourth will be here, and the fifth will be here. So on the second keyframe here, change the point of interest just by dragging this anchor point. And boom, let's make it like that. And now we have an idea where should we put our cube. So yeah, this is how it looks. Right now when you look at the active camera, you can see that there's transition between them. And of course we should also create the animation of the rotation on the second cube. And now when we go to one view, this is how it looks. We should make this second cube stay on the screen for longer. Also in my animation I've deleted the trim paths keyframes from all of the cubes except for the first cube, so only the first cube is getting created like that. So the last thing to do is to create the animation of this ball. So firstly we'll make this ball move a little to the left and then a quick move to the right. But after the transition is finished from the white screen to the black screen, we'll actually cut this ball. We can make the first part shy, because in this part of the animation we'll be working with a new circle. Remember to also remove the parent link of this ball. Open the position parameter and delete all the keyframes that are here. And go to the first keyframe of the camera, so where the transition starts. Keyframe the position here, go 10 frames ahead, keyframe the position again. Go back to the first keyframe and actually go 5 frames or 4 frames before that. So we do that because on the second keyframe we'll move the ball a little to the left, and then on the last keyframe we'll move the ball to the right so that it's not visible on the screen. And right now we'll create a new null object, put it below everything just above the ball, so right there. Trim the start of it, parent link the ball to this null. So on the 3 position keyframes of this ball, at the first keyframe it's just at our starting position, second keyframe we want it to move a little to the left, and then third keyframe we want it to move completely to the right so that it's out of the screen for now. And then when we create the null object, we want the screen to move to the left, so it looks like the ball is moving with the screen. And a little but very important detail at the end, is that you want to add glow to basically everything in this animation. So just to show you as an example, I will add glow to this cube. Search for glow. And as you can see, with glow it looks much better. You have to remember about this glow because this is a very important part of this black and white Dan Koe style animation. These are the values on my glow. You can pause the video and copy them. But the icon has different parameters, so intensity 0.8, radius 118 and threshold 100%. And basically now you have to put the glow on every layer in this animation. You can also tweak the settings of this glow to make it look better. And now in order to finish this animation, you have to create this semicircle with the cubes and then make the transition from one cube to another by keyframing the point of interest and of course by moving this ball to the right. And this is everything in this tutorial. Thank you guys for watching and see you in the next one.